clarify for us whether or not these retrenchments are going ahead, and what about staff who are on a go slow then?
Okay, good afternoon, Koli, and good afternoon to your viewers at home. Koli, I'm here in my capacity as Deputy Chairperson of the Board, and I speak on behalf of a view, an alternative view that is held by some of the board members who actually are against the 189 process. We feel that the retrenchment process should not go ahead. We feel that there are other options that are available in order to curtail costs and to deal with the cost challenges that the SABC is facing. And as such, we have been speaking about our dissent and our view against the retrenchment for quite a long period of time in relation, in the context of our board meetings. But we felt that in view of the extent of the challenge and the problem that was presented by the newsroom yesterday, we felt that it's time now that we speak out. Even if we are the minority view on the board, we think it's important that people know that it is not the unanimous view of the board that retrenchments must take place. We feel that there are other means and ways of dealing with the situation.
How many are you that disagree with this move on the board?
There's 5 of us on the board who disagree with the approach that's being taken. And we, as I've already indicated, we have said we are an institution that has just received a bailout. We have an obligation to turn around the institution. And the way in which we'll be able to turn around the institution is if we have our staff in the right frame of mind. Now, this retrenchment process is clearly affecting the morale of staff. And I'm sure you all saw from the conduct and the approach by the staff members in the newsroom. They are highly affected by what is going on. And as such, as board members, we can't sit back and allow this, because at the end of the day, it works contrary to our fiduciary duty of making sure that SABC is a viable institution and we work in their best interest. So our staff morale is critical for us to be able to turn around the institution and to make sure we don't go back for another bailout. We actually utilize the bailout effectively and turn around the institution. We need our staff.
Explain the standpoint of the majority members of the board and why they feel it is necessary and why it is that these retrenchments cannot be put in abeyance.
Koli, look, I think they would best represent their own views. I'm here obviously to represent the views of the minority on the board, but I think this whole issue really stems from one aspect. When the issue of the turnaround was canvassed by the SABC and specifically the board of the SABC, it was agreed that there would be a turnaround plan and that the 2 biggest cost drivers that needed to be addressed was that obviously of signal distribution, and the second one was in relation to the high salary bill. Then as part of that, it was then agreed that there would have to be some action that would be taken by the board in order to address the very high salary bill. And we as the minority are not saying this should not be addressed. We are just arguing that the methodology that is being used is not correct. The issue around the approach of retrenching people is not the only mechanism that you can use in order to address the issue of the high salary bill. We can obviously put in place cost-cutting measures in other areas of the business in relation to our procurement, in relation to also from an HR point of view, we look at how we can cut on costs in relation to our litigation. We look at measures where we can also cut in relation to not giving salary increases, not paying out bonuses, and such other measures in order to make sure that at the end of the day, we try and retain our skilled staff, because at the end, the ultimate effect of the retrenchment is that we are going to also lose a lot of experienced and skilled people. And these are the very people who we need in order to turn the SABC around. But now we are contradicting ourselves by saying we want to turn around the institution in one turn, and then on the other turn, we then proceed to start retrenching people.
Let me ask you 2 questions then, Ms. Mohlala-Mulaudzi. By breaking rank with the majority of the board members, is that not going to be a slippery slope? Because the board has said on numerous occasions that there are people at the SABC, as tough as it is, this exercise of retrenching people, there are people, as a result of the previous management that was there, who had positions created for them. There were people whose salaries were inflated as a result of whatever arrangement they had with the previous management that was led by, among others, Mr. Hlaude Motsoeneng. Those people, those positions, isn't that what is being dealt with? And by you breaking ranks, are you not now scuppering the whole process? Is this not a slippery slope for the SABC's turnaround strategy?
Okay. Now, I think one must understand, and I've said this in response to your previous question, we accept that we need to turn around the institution. We accept that these high costs are a reality for the SABC and they need to be addressed. But we are saying the methodology that's being utilized is the wrong methodology. There are many ways in which you can address the issue of the salary bill. And even in relation to what you're raising around the issue of irregular appointments, I think one must understand these are two separate issues. There is the issue of the Section 189, which is the retrenchment of staff. Then the issue that you're raising around the historical issues around the former COO, Mr. Motsoeneng, that is an issue that was raised in the context of the Public Protector's report, and there were issues around irregular appointments. The two processes are being undertaken concurrently, but one must understand that these processes are not the same. They are two separate processes. So let us not convolute the two. Now, in relation to your third question about the issue of breaking ranks, I really believe at the end of the day, it is important for not only the staff of SABC, but for the general public to know that there are two views in the matter. We are not unanimous on this matter as a board, and it is part of our democratic right and part of any democratic discourse that views of different people around the table be known and be publicly known as such. And as I've already indicated, we have previously tried to have this discussion at the board, and unfortunately, reason is not prevailing. And after what actually occurred yesterday, we would be remiss as the minority group on the board, we would be remiss and will be breach of our fiduciary duty if we don't come out publicly and speak to what our views are on the matter.
Yeah.
And the reason over and above that is that we believe by this action that we're taking, we will start to not only convince our fellow colleagues, but we will also start to convince our staff members, those in executive management, that this is something that cannot be undertaken in the way it is being undertaken. We need to find an alternative way of dealing with it. So it's quite critical that we speak out.
I've got to ask you the question because you keep referring to the scenes that we saw yesterday, very emotional, and indeed, I don't think anybody cannot not empathize with the colleagues at the SABC. I've got to ask you the question, how do you think news management has handled this issue of retrenchment notices?
When you say news management, I don't quite understand. Are you talking about the executive management that was present when this situation unfolded yesterday?
That's correct.
As far as I'm concerned, I really believe that at the end of the day, one needs to do what is critical. And I think in that discourse, it was fairly stated that people's emotions, people's views, people's objection was being taken into account. And I think that is always critical. People's views need to be taken into account. We are not dealing with robots, we are dealing with people, we are dealing with people's livelihoods, we are dealing with people's families. So at the end of the day, you need to hear what they have to say. And one mustn't be misconstrued as saying we cannot make difficult decisions. Yes, we can. But by the same token, our law provides for many alternative measures that can be undertaken in order to address the situation. And we believe that all the alternatives have not been exhausted. And those alternatives need to be exhausted first before you go to a drastic measure of retrenchment. You can't start with retrenchment, which is the most drastic step. You need to try all the other steps and look at all other cost-cutting measures before you go to the ultimate step. So that's all we're saying.
Yeah.
Let us be sensible, let us work within the law, and let's look at all alternatives before we go to the drastic step.
Yeah, and I speak to you here, Ms. Mohlala-Mulaudzi, with a statement in my hand with, from the South African Broadcasting Corporation, and it's about the very events that occurred yesterday. And I'm going to quote what the head of HR is saying, that in light of the unfortunate incident which took place at our news division last night, please note that the Section 189 process is continuing as planned. SABC management and its board apologize for any confusion that was created yesterday afternoon. The public broadcaster's head of human resources, Mochaki Mosia. Do you agree with that line of thought? Do you agree with the decision that clearly is going ahead?
Cody, what I always believe in is that we have processes and we have structures within the SABC. Yesterday we had a meeting with the minister and the deputy minister and the acting DG in the department, where they were also wanting to get full information around this process. Today we are expected to go to Parliament to also speak to the process and how the board views the process going forward. But prior to the parliamentary process, there will be a board meeting during the course of today, whereby we expect that we will interact. And as I've already said, we believe strongly that the voice of reason will prevail in this matter. And we are only 5 members currently out of a board of 11 who are obviously echoing the sentiments. But we believe that the numbers are growing, and as time goes on, we will be able to convince our colleagues to obviously accept that we adopt a different approach prior to or without undertaking a retrenchment process. So we do believe that there will be a board meeting prior to our parliamentary process, and again, we will be relentless in our pursuit of trying to convince our colleagues that we adopt the most humane, the most practical, and the legally correct approach, which is obviously a consultation with the staff and the unions and all other third parties prior to any drastic decisions being made, and also to look at cost-cutting measures.
All right. Finally and briefly, Mamodupi, as divided as you are as the board now, do you still believe, though, that the turnaround strategy that has been produced is one to stand by?
I do believe so. I'm sure you also read in the media yesterday that unfortunately the SABC has posted some losses, and we are concerned that if we don't resolve this impasse with the staff, there has been a threat that there could be a blackout, and we want to prevent that by all measures, because if there is a blackout, it adds to the challenges that we have from a financial point of view. So we need to make sure that we have an effective SABC that is channeled towards implementing the turnaround strategy fully, and that we'll have all hands on deck with the right morale and the right work attitude to make sure that we achieve what we want to achieve. So we believe that we will push and we will get what is required going forward.
Mamodupi Mohlala-Mulaudzi, thanks indeed for your time. She's the Deputy Board Chairperson at the SABC.